buy this, the 2024 Mazda ND MX5 RF GT RS. This is the top of the line offering of the MX5 lineup currently, and today we're going to answer the question whether going into 2025 you should buy this car. I've been thrown the keys to this car by the awesome team at Mazda Australia, so thank you very, very much. But they've thrown me the keys with no strings attached, which means that I can say anything that I want about this car. So today's video is a totally unbiased review. No one's paying me to say anything you're about to see today. These are all my own thoughts. Come with me and let's answer the question about whether this car is worth more than 60,000 Australian dollars. My name's Pat. This channel's 2PJZ. Let's get cracking. Before we get too much further into today's video, I would love if you would hit that subscribe button. I work really, really hard on this channel. Going into 2025, I'm putting all my effort into making this the best car channel that you have come across on the internet. I run heaps of short form content over on my Instagram, so go and check that out. The more people that subscribe means the more cool opportunities we get like this. We'll get more press cars, more fun, more travel, and it'll be a way better experience for both you and I. Really appreciate it. Let's get stuck in. So the baseline things that you need to know about the MX5 is that it is the most popular roadster, two-seater convertible, whatever you want to call it, car in the world, with over 1.1 million units sold since its debut in 1989. This particular car, the RF GT RS, is a 2-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder car that is rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual, and weighs only 1,140 kilograms. And if that's not the recipe for a good driver's car, then I don't know what pipe you're smoking from. So what does the MX5 RF GT RS get over the base model RF GT or even the RF GT black roof? Come with me and we'll have a look because you can see most of them. The car has these forged BBS wheels. These aren't actually black, these are more of like a gunmetal grey colour. You get Brembo brakes, and under the car here, which you can't really see that well, you get Bilstein suspension, and under the bonnet here you get this strut tower brace as well, which helps stiffen up the suspension on the front of the car. The first pro to talk about with the Mazda MX5 ND RF GT RS, which is a massive mouthful by the way, is perhaps the most important one, but it is also the most obvious, and that is its driving experience. The MX5 platform for 30 years now has been built on one thing and one thing only, and that is pure fun and enjoyment. And while it's not the fastest car in the world, which we'll talk about in the cons section, it is so much fun to drive thanks to its lightweight nature, being only around 1,100 kilos. The environment of the car feels nice to be in. I've owned 2 previous generation MX5s in the NA and NB, so being in the ND, it almost feels quite strange in a way to be inside an MX5 with all these premium features. This nice steering wheel, the new car smell, all sorts of things that come with a top of the line performance car. But the most important part about the MX5 is where I started, and that is that the car is fun. It's not a world record holder for any sort of lap times around the Nürburgring or anything like that. The MX5 isn't built to go as fast as your favorite supercar. It's built for you to jump in, daily drive it, take it to the hills, take it to the track, and just have heaps and heaps of fun and put a massive smile on your face. I believe truly that that was the main engineering thesis behind this car, was how can we put the biggest smile on our customers' faces. And I think with this car, Mazda have done a really, really good job with that. The next best thing about the MX5 is this, its retractable hardtop. The RF variant of the MX5 stands for roof, or retractable roof, and you can also get the soft top variant in Australia. But when the car can do this and transform itself from a fully fledged coupe to a convertible, why wouldn't you want the hardtop? Driving this car around for a couple of weeks, I loved the fact that I could have the roof up and it would act as a coupe whenever I wanted, and I could easily pull over, put the roof down in the space of 30 seconds and have a convertible with the wind in my hair. The next thing to mention with the MX5 is the fuel economy, and ordinarily I wouldn't bring fuel economy too much into a performance car discussion, but this is a car that is made for daily driving as well as weekend driving, so the fuel economy is a really important aspect. Being a very lightweight, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder car, you would expect that the car would have good fuel economy, and it does. Out of the 40-litre fuel tank, which is quite a small tank, in my driving I've done about 500 k's in the car this week and have been driving driving it quite spiritedly, I've got on average around 7.2 litres per 100 kilometres, and that's through mainly city driving, daily driving, and then going for a few little blasts around the mountain areas as well. So if you're looking for the MX5 as a daily driver car, it will absolutely tick that box. And of course, one of my favourite things to mention with the MX5 is this. It's 6-speed manual transmission. It is so refreshing to see a manufacturer still putting out a car with an engaging 6-speed manual. This is the only option that the RF GT RS comes in, which I think is awesome. These cars need to have a manual for you to be able to get the most out of them. The shifting on this is really direct. It's a really nice, strong gearbox. The last thing that I absolutely love about this car is that it perfectly represents Mazda's legacy of the MX5. We've seen so often when manufacturers release their newer versions of their hero cars that they lose the essence of what the old ones were. And while I admit that obviously we can't get anything like we got in the older days due to emissions and everything else going on in the world, the ND MX5 takes the spirit from the first ever NA MX5, which debuted at the Chicago Auto Show in 1989, and has kept it in a car 36 years later in 2024. I've had the NA, I've had the NB, I haven't driven the NC, and now driving this, I can certainly feel the evolution, but I also feel that the heart of the MX5 is still inside the car. The ND MX5, just like all the previous generations, was developed with Mazda's Jinba Itai philosophy, which technically translates to horse and rider as one. And the feeling that you get when you drive the car is that you are one with the car. That's the whole point of having something lightweight, fun, with no roof, manual. You are driving the car. And even though this does have a lot more electronic assist than you would find in the previous generation MX5s, the spirit has continued all the way through, and is something that really speaks to me. Now, as we come to a stop here, with the good comes the bad. And speaking of going slowly like we are in traffic right now, that's where this car is slightly let down. It's the fact that it's not that quick. And I did mention at the start of the video that obviously the MX5 was never meant to be a Nürburgring lap record setting car, and that's absolutely fine. But I would expect something of this day and age for 60,000 Australian dollars, especially when you compare it to cars like the GR Yaris, the GR86, and even getting towards FL5 Type R territory. I would like to see a little bit more power out of this car. Although this car, as I've said, is not about being super fast in a straight line. And trust me, I've thrown this car pretty hard around some corners, and you plant your foot coming out of it and it just absolutely loves it. So it's often the case with cars like this and older stuff. I loved my previous generation MX5s, where you can often have more fun going fast in a slow car as opposed to going slow in a fast car. If you actually love your driving and you're looking for the experience of driving, I wouldn't be too dissuaded by the fact that this car isn't that fast. However, it is a very important thing to consider for the price point, and something that I wanted to start this cons list with. One of my biggest pet peeves about daily driving the MX5, as much as I have so far, is that the cabin is tiny. And you might be saying, well, sure Pat, it's a convertible, it's a roadster, you're not going to have much cabin space, but the cabin space in this car is particularly small. If you're anything like me, which is over 6 foot, I'm 6'2", your head will barely fit in the car. I'm just sitting up a little bit and my head is hitting up on the roof here. And I've gone over a couple of bumps and I have knocked my head on the roof. So it is something to keep in mind that if you are a bigger person like myself, you might struggle to fit in. I've got the seat all the way back, and still, if I sit straight up, my head against the headrest here, my head is actually touching the roof right now. But the point of the MX5 is to have it with the roof down, so who cares, whatever. If you're driving this and it's raining, that is a very important consideration. And something else that really frustrates me is the lack of space in here. This here is an iPhone 16 Pro. You probably have the same one, but even if you had a Samsung, there is nowhere to put your phone in here. You've got this really useless little center console area that if I put my phone in here, and come have a look at this, firstly, it doesn't fit, and secondly, even if you do try and jimmy it in there, it just doesn't shut. So that pocket is useless. I guess if you have a pair of sunnies, you can chuck your sunnies in there. That's probably the only thing that you can actually put in there. Maybe a small card wallet. But other than that, there is no space to put anything major. You do have this little pocket back here, but again, like, you wouldn't really want to chuck your phone in there just in case you needed to grab it out for whatever reason. But that is a bit of a gripe that I've had. I do like though how it comes with these dual cup holders. That is something that not a lot of convertibles or sports cars that I've ever driven actually have from factory. So I will give Mazda points there. than the lack of space in the cabin, being a small car too, and having this massive electric roof that folds into the back, consequently the boot space is quite small. And this is something that's understandable, but you need to know, this is my camera bag, and you could probably get another couple of backpacks in here. You could maybe get a carry-on size suitcase in here, but to actually test that out properly when we're back at home, I'm going to be publishing a reel on my Instagram, which you can find in the description below to check out what we can actually fit in the MX5 if you're interested. And one thing that I wanted to mention, particularly when we were driving, and I really hope you can hear me for this, is that the blind spot in this car, particularly on your right shoulder, if you're driving on the right hand side of the road, I imagine it'll be the same on the left hand side of the road if you're watching this from America, is absolutely awful. You cannot see anything over your right shoulder, and the mirrors on the side of the car are okay, but to have that peace of mind to actually check your blind spot is just straight up not possible in the ND with the RF variant, because the roll bar is right behind your head and there's nowhere to look unless you physically stick your head outside the car. Part of the driving experience too involves how the car feels under your feet and under your hands. We've already talked about the gearbox and how nice this 6-speed shifter feels under your left hand or right if you're from the US. But we need to talk about the clutch, because I really do not like this clutch. I am used to having a much heavier clutch in a lot of my performance Japanese cars, like my old RX-7, my R32 GTR, my Evo, and a bunch of other cars that I've had, which provide a bit more of a solid clutch feel on your foot. This really feels like you're driving your grandma's Mazda 2. It just feels like an economy car. It doesn't feel like a performance car. For me personally, I love the feel of a nice hard clutch. I want to feel that resistance against my left foot when I'm changing gears. But with this, which makes it really good for daily driving, it's very light, it's very easy. But again, this could just be a totally personal preference. You could like something really light, particularly if you want to daily drive this car. Another con that's really important to mention is that the ND MX5 RF GT RS is an incredibly expensive car to buy brand new for what you get. This car drive away is around 61,000 Australian dollars, which is nothing to sneeze at. First main competitor to the MX5 is of course the Subaru BRZ or the Toyota GR86, which you can see on the screen now. This car comes in at around 48 to 52,000 Australian dollars, so it could be a better buy in your books because it's around 10,000 Australian dollars cheaper. What you do get in the BRZ or the GR86 as well is a 2.4 litre naturally aspirated flat 4. That's an extra bit of power on top of the 2 litre engine that you find in the MX5. That engine in the BRZ or the GR86 produces around 233 horsepower. The car weighs around 100 kilos more, but it does have more torque, therefore giving it a higher power to weight ratio. So if you want something that's a bit cheaper with a bit more power and you're happy to sacrifice the open top driving, you can buy a GR86. But I think for me, if I was looking at the two, this car with that open top experience just gives you something that you cannot get anywhere else for the price point in a brand new car. This next comparison in my mind is someone who enjoys track and hills driving could be a little bit unfair to the mighty MX5, and that is the Toyota GR Yaris. This car blew everyone away when it's released, and all these years later, Toyota is still improving it. In the GR Yaris, you get a 1.6 litre inline 3 turbocharged motor. Obviously, this car is naturally aspirated. The GR Yaris with a turbo is already potentially a massive pro that you might want when looking at a performance car. That's also a more practical car because it's a hatchback. You can fit more stuff in it. It's got back seats, and it's also all-wheel drive. This car is rear-wheel drive, so again, it just depends what you're looking for. The GR Yaris has around 268 horsepower from memory, and it is an incredibly good car, having driven one myself. Would I pick this over a GR Yaris? Personally, absolutely not. The GR Yaris is such an amazing car. So I do feel a little bit sad to say that about the MX5, but in my opinion, having driven both, the GR Yaris is probably my pick out of those two. The last direct comparison for the MX5 in my mind, when you're looking at 60,000 Australian dollars, has to be a Lotus. If you're looking for something that has no roof, has 2 seats, is rear wheel drive, is a nice punchy, naturally aspirated motor. You can't go past a Lotus for this money. I just had a look on car sales there. You can see it on the screen now. There are multiple options for under 60,000 Australian dollars, anywhere from the late 90s to the early 2000s and even mid 2000s Lotuses with the 1.6 or 1.8 litre Toyota ZZ engine. Supercharged or naturally aspirated will depend on the price and the specific model, and while that motor is a slightly smaller output than you would find in the 2 litre version of this in the MX5, the Lotus does have a big weight advantage. It's a little bit lighter and it's a more direct car. However, I wouldn't say it's as suited for daily driving. It's definitely not as practical as far as 2-seater cars go as the MX5 is. It doesn't have those modern features like cruise control and Apple CarPlay and everything else that you might be accustomed to. This car has seat warmers too, by the way, which I haven't even noticed, which is just bonky for a convertible. And you don't get any of the creature comforts that you do get in this car. So it depends what your use case is. If it's a weekender, buy the Lotus. If it's a daily, buy this. So there you have it, the 2024 Mazda MX5 ND RF GT RS, and that is still, even this far on in the video, such a mouthful. Should you buy this car in 2025? I've given you a number of reasons why you should, but also a number of reasons why you perhaps wouldn't want to. So I have to leave the decision up to you. If this was my personal case for how I like to drive and what I want my garage to look like, I definitely do see a spot for the MX5. However, it wouldn't be something that I would buy until I already had maybe another 15 to 20 cars for around the same sort of money that you can buy one of these for brand new. However, if you're looking for something brand new that is just straight up out the box fun, reliability, naturally aspirated torquiness, punchiness, and just puts smiles on the dial with the whole Mazda philosophy that we spoke about earlier, this is a really, really solid choice. And it's no surprise that we see so many ND MX5s on the road. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. I'd love you to hit me with all of your questions that you have about the ND in the comments box below. If you have one of these yourself, let me know what your favorite thing is about owning, just so anyone who watches this video who might actually want to buy one can hear from owners themselves. That would be super helpful to me and the community. I really hope you've enjoyed. Make sure you smash that subscribe button so we can get even more cars like this on the channel and just take it to the next level in 2025. I'm hitting this channel so hard. Make sure you go and follow my Instagram and TikTok because I post daily short form content over there. My name's Pat. This is 2PJZ. Stay driven, have fun, and see you next time.